Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. It's just going to take me a second to get the conference room camera up and running. I am here with Tom Koch, though.
Boy. Let's see. 1, 2. Well, we've got 2 of us here, Jeannie. Now let's run right through this map. Rob said he was going to be about 15 minutes late. He's got to get over, I think, from his radio show in Waterbury. And
I see Mary. Mary's here.
Okay, good. Tom was a little unclear about, Tom K was a little bit unclear about exactly when he could get in, and he might have to take a run to White River Junction.
I'm sitting here. Tom K's here with me in State Street.
Wow, okay. So why don't I call the work session to order, understanding that we may be getting some more board members coming in. I think we'll defer action on the minutes of yesterday's meeting until we either get a draft or have a chance to read it. And the purpose of this board meeting today is, I think the only item on the agenda is to look at continuing inputs and receipts of reports from boards of civil authority from around the state, and try to work on a consensus or synthesized House district map. And by my suggestion, where I think we're going to try to start that down in Pownell, in Bennington County, and work our way out from there to see how we do. And I know Jean Albert on the board is prepared to share her screen when we get to that point. And I think we are going to be doing some shifting back and forth between the single district only map and the single and 2-member district version, depending upon where the momentum seems to be at that point. And Chris, I guess, Chris, you posted, you sent us a note this morning that we now have 148 reports from boards of civil authority. Those are, the new ones are in the process of being loaded up onto the
That's correct, Tom. And either Mia can jump in and confirm, or I can check the website real quick here to confirm that I believe those are all now uploaded to the website under the resources tab.
That's correct, Chris. All updates are current on the website.
Thank you, Mia. And thanks, Eric, for pulling it together this morning as well.
Can you all hear and see us now?
sorry, say again.
Can you hear and see us?
Yes.
Yep.
And yes.
Yep. While we are getting warmed up here, note that we have at least two members of the public in the meeting, John Welch and Peter Carby. Would either of you like to give us some brief public comment at this point in our meeting under the provisions of Title I, Section 312H?
Hey, Tom, I'm part of the Secretary of State's office and I'm a member of the public.
Ah, well, sorry for that, John.
No problem. No problem.
You're part of the team.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr.
John is
Carter,
our IT manager, Tom.
Good grief.
Yeah, it's a fun job.
Mr. Carby, would you like to address the board?
Just very briefly, I came to, again, request that the board not divide our town of Washington. That will be seen further in, but primarily I'm here to watch the sausage making.
Okay.
I'd like to just mention that I did, Peter, I got your message and I read it quite carefully and I do plan to respond. Your comments are helpful. I just have been preparing for this meeting and did not get a chance to reply. So I apologize. But I am, as well as your comments about the Senate, which I doubt we'll be able to talk about today, or I mean, I guess I don't want to presume, but though obviously that's helpful as well. So just want to make sure to say that.
So, and I don't know, don't recall from yesterday's discussion at the board meeting whether Jeremy is going to be able to join us for any or what portion of this meeting. Why don't we get off to a slow roll here, a slow start. The current House district that Pownell is in is Bennington-1 with the town of Woodford. And that, just a moment, I'm going to pull up a copy of the House district deviations. So Bennington-1 House district, it's a single member House district and its population deviation with the 2020 census figures is a minus 15.7. So by our methodology and consensus, that is a district that needs to be adjusted in some fashion to address that very high population deviation. The single member district map that Jeremy and Rob proposed combining Pownell with Stamford, not with Woodford, and to yield a population deviation of a minus 3.9, which is well within the generally accepted range. We heard quickly from Stamford that they didn't think that was a good idea for them. Historically and geographically, they align with towns to the east or north, and gave us a sort of you can't get there from here description of the Pownell situation. So I know that Rob and Jeremy are mindful of that, but I don't recall if they discussed with us at a previous board meeting how they might adjust for that. Gene, in the map that you've developed, what was your proposal for the Bennington 1 district, or at least the towns, Woodford and Pownell and the surrounding area?
Yeah, my proposal, I also had put Pownell and Stamford together. So that was actually this exact same district as in the tentative proposal that went to towns. And I also thought about the feedback we got from Stamford and some of the surrounding towns, and kind of took the 6 towns in the southwest corner, namely Bennington, Pownell, Woodford, Stamford, Searsburg, and Reedsboro, and divided them in a way that joins, that is combined them in a way, I should say, that joins Stamford with Reedsboro, which was one of the towns that Stamford specifically mentioned that had a connection. And I believe we even heard potentially just from one or more individuals that Reedsboro and Stamford were aligned. So I made an effort to form a district that they would both be in. And you can see from the map, at least, in addition, that the roads do go in that direction from Stamford to Reedsboro. So I formed a district that is, one of them is, it would be not quite all of Pownell, Stamford, and Reedsboro. And the part that isn't in there, that's from Pownell, is joined with Bennington to increase its deviation, or sorry, decrease its deviation, which also was too high. But I could show it to you if that would be helpful. I realize we're waiting for some other folks, but if you want to see it, I can put it up. I could share it.
Let's do that.
I see a folk coming. I see Rob has entered.
Hello.
Hi. Would that be helpful if I mean, you know, whenever, yes?
Please, go ahead.
Mary has her hand up.
Doesn't that leave, I'm assuming it must be the southern or maybe southeastern part of Pownell that you're putting with Stamford. And doesn't that still leave the connection problem of you can't get there from here?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it is true that Pownell and Stamford wouldn't be easy to drive directly to. I do get that. But at least Stamford had a connection to one of the other towns, which is Reedsboro.
Right.
So
yeah,
that
that side's fine.
I understood that I wasn't improving that problem.
Yeah.
But I was at least hopefully making Stamford feel less isolated.
Yep.
That was kind of the idea. So I can show it to you.
Yes.
If that's good. And I do need to be given permission for that to share.
One moment. Of course, suppose we just start by putting Stamford in with that other district, which make an 8-town district going all the way up to Wardsboro. What would that create?
So just to be clear what I'm talking about, can you see what I'm describing?
Yes.
So the can you see my pointer, sort of, or not?
Yes.
You can't. Anyway, so you can see Pownell, Stamford, and Reedsboro at the bottom here, which is a -1%. So I could make it bigger. Would that be helpful?
Sure, let's try that, see how it looks.
Mary is making a face that suggests a certain amount of pain. So I'm trying to.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Is that better?
Just trying to hit the right part of my glasses.
Sorry, I just want to make sure. If I blow it up anymore, it might get a little fuzzy to read. But just so you, and I
No,
get an
this
idea
is
of
great.
what I was trying to do here is I took this northwest corner of Pownell, because there's some other things I was also trying to solve at the same time, which was additional carving up that I wanted to reduce. So, which isn't maybe obvious just if you're looking at Pownell Stamford by itself, in isolation. But this is what I came up with. It's, as you see, Pownell, Stamford, Reedsboro along the bottom, and then it's a 2-member district with most of, well, it's basically all of what was the 2-member district here in the southeast corner of Bennington, with enough added to improve its deviation from Pownell. And then the rest of Bennington, Woodford, and Searsburg. Although Searsburg could go either way, I just kept it side to side. So that's just was one idea I had that is not perfect, because it is true, and perfect in the sense that, well, Pownell and Stamford still don't connect very well. But I was more worried about Stamford having a part of the district that it did feel connected to, and they identified Reedsboro. And that's it. But I can stop sharing if people want to talk about something else. But
And the existing Windham Bennington single-member 6-town district, which I think Tom Koch was mentioning a moment ago, which runs currently from Wardsboro down to Dover, over to Somerset, down to Searsburg, Reedsboro, and over to Stamford. That, which, hang on, remember whether that, what the deviation of that is, the Windham Bennington district. It's that's a plus 2.9. So that district by its currently single member low deviation is currently fine, but in order to, again, in order to address the deviation issue that's in the current Bennington 1 district of Pownell and Woodford, some other town or towns need to be put into play, even if they're possibly from a district which by itself has no deviation problems. This sort of, I know this is at a very fundamental level, but I just wanted to start there. And once we start with that suggestion, we then create, we then trigger the a more significant reshuffling of the other towns in that existing Wyndham Bennington district. And I think so. Rob, are you set up and ready to take a look at where we are?
I'm just trying to catch up. I mean, I've
Okay.
got everything.
Well, what
open.
we're doing, we decided to start down in Bennington, and for the lack of a better suggestion, the Bennington 1 single member district with Pownell and Woodford, which has a minus 15.7 population deviation.
Yeah.
And the tentative map resolved that by proposing to put Stamford in with Pownell to get to a minus 3.9. We heard from the Stamford Board of Civil Authority and some others that was not, in their view, that was far from ideal, and that Stamford is much better oriented to the east and north. So Jean just walked us through her proposal to combine Stamford and Reedsboro with a majority of Pownell that doesn't completely resolve the Stamford concern about being conjoined with Pownell, but it addresses it in another way by bringing Reedsboro in, and then the northeast corner of Pownell would be joined with what is currently the Bennington 2-2 district and boost its population so that that would remain, Jean, I take it, a 2-member district. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. It's currently that district that is in the enacted map is a -12 or -12.1. That is its current deviation from standard, from ideal, is slightly more than 1,000 below.
Okay.
And this, I added, I believe, right around 500 people. A little less, I guess. From Pownell.
And it's so Pownell, most of Pownell, Woodford, and Reedsboro would be a single-member district. Bennington 2-2 would remain a 2-member district.
And I'll just add that in the original, when I was originally doing it, when I originally had Pownell and Stamford together, in order to, I was working on keeping it at Bennington 2-2 as a 2-member district. I took that 500 that was needed, roughly speaking, from Bennington itself. I just kind of expanded it out a little bit more, that Bennington 2-2. But then that caused additional ripples, and that meant I grabbed part of Shaftesbury, and that was kind of then that too led to some other issues. And so this solution kind of allowed me to pull back those other divisions that I had made. That seems like an improvement, at least in the map I had originally made. Most of these districts here are now closer to status quo. There's some changes, but clearly the Bennington area may be the most, but that is the town of Bennington.
Right. So if, as one of the, Tom Koch made a suggestion a bit ago, that if you took Stamford, looking at the tentative house map, took Stamford and put it in the district with
Reedsboro,
Woodford, Searsburg, Somerset, Dover, and Wardsboro, we'd be adding 861 people to that, and that would, I'm sorry, Glastonbury appears to be in there. That would address the Stamford concern. I don't know what it would do to the deviation in that district, which is currently proposed at a -9.8. But it would leave Pownell without, will leave Pownell in the hole. So Rob, what is your thinking about how, if at all, to how would you address the Stamford concern that we heard?
Well, I'm not quite sure, to be honest, at this point.
Okay,
My original thought was that try to return Pownell and Woodford into a district together, as they have been, which leaves them light. And then you put Stamford in with Reedsboro, Searsburg, but then you'd still have to figure out someplace to make up that.
It would have to come out of Bennington.
I mean, maybe something along what Jeannie has with Bennington and Pownell making up a district, and then you can put Shaftesbury back together, which I think was a comment that they would prefer to be made whole and in a district of Arlington, if I remember correctly.
So does anyone offhand recall the Shaftesbury's proposal aside from their criticism?
My recollection is they did want to remain whole. They also, even though it's very small number of people, they spoke very strongly about keeping Glastonbury with them, because I guess they're all very much right next to Shaftesbury. I have to go back and look and see.
Yeah, I recall Glastonbury comments.
Did Shaftesbury actually make any comments? I think it was
Yeah,
their
they
neighbors.
I'm looking at it, it's a long.
Yeah,
Sunderland had a lot to say about
right.
it. It's Sunderland, Arlington, and Sandgate, and add Shaftesbury to Bennington, Windham. Peru, Windhall, Landgrove, Stratton, Jamaica, and Wardsboro, and then be Bennington 5.
I mean, it struck me that there were some districts there at the northern part of Bennington towns that were somewhat in conflict with each other around who wanted to be with whom. I mean, and then actually not just there, also in the center there, the kind of Windham, Bennington, this, sort of Londonderry, Windhall, Stratton, Jamaica, Weston, a lot of them wanted to be with some of the others, but not all of the others. And so that was another thing I was trying. I mean, there was not going to be possible to make them all happy, but you could make maybe all of them slightly more happy.
Yep.
Which is sort of the name of the game, I guess, at this point, if it's possible.
So Gene, why don't you, can you put yours back up and say what you what you're proposing about, let's do the Bennington.
Sure.
Bennington, Shaftesbury, take a look at the picture.
Okay. So just so you can get the idea, so can you see it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So as I was saying a little while ago, I combined part of Pownell, the northeast corner of Pownell, with the southeast corner of Bennington to increase the population in Bennington 2.2, and then Bennington 2.1 was also had a negative deviation in the current, -9, I believe, a little over 9, -9. But in any case, Woodford would have to go somewhere because it had been with Pownell. So then I, put those together. What had been Bennington 2-1 with Woodford and Searsburg added.
Okay.
And that meant I didn't have to carve out a piece of Shaftesbury, which is what I guess both of us did, at least to some, in different ways, both of our maps. Then I could leave Shaftesbury alone, which is, as you can see, almost, it's close, but not quite a single member district by itself. So this district here, Shaftesbury, Glastonbury, and then this portion of Sunderland is very close to the current district. I took a little bit more of Sunderland. Most of the people actually live in the smaller piece.
Right.
In the northwest and west. You can kind of do the math to figure out how many I must have taken, but I'm gonna not do it myself for a sec, So most of what's in this part, sort of going the two column of towns, the 2 column of towns kind of on the southwest and then north through Bennington County are pretty close to status quo. If you're trying to get a sense of what you're looking at. And then the other thing as I was just mentioning earlier, moving more to the center of the state, of a south central area, I was trying to, one of these districts that I think was the original Windham, Bennington, Windsor was like 20%.
Yeah.
Positive 20%, something like that.
Londonderry's population jumped up.
Right. And and then also, of course, I had the removal of Stamford down the bottom there. And so this was a kind of a second pass at a rearrangement of these towns kind of in the center here. And when you look at the feedback, many of them really do have affinity with others. And I did my best, or at least I did what I think is an improvement over at least what I had proposed before, possibly what is in the tentative proposal in terms of what is, who is grouped with whom. That many of them wanted to be with Peru and Landgrove, by the way, which I think the tentative proposal does, right? It puts them with Windham. Yeah. You're Bennington 5.
Yeah.
I tried, but I couldn't figure out how to do that without causing too many problems somewhere else. So I wasn't able to do that.
What the feedback from Woodford is consistent with wanting to stay in what they refer to as the mountain towns, which would not include Bennington. I know we have Mount Anthony and Bennington, but I think the Woodford commentary was wanted to be with Searsburg, Reedsboro, Halifax, Whitingham, Wardsboro, that collection of some kind. So if you took, and I don't know where the population is, if there's a cluster of population in Woodford or not, but if you what is your deviation, Gene, for the, I can't read it, the Bennington.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Bennington Woodford Searsburg, that's a minus 3.48.
Yeah.
And that's a 2-member district.
Right. Right. I mean, another way to think of it is if you take out Woodford and Searsburg, you'd have to take both if you're going to take Woodford. You're then back to the the current existing Bennington 2-1.
And that deviation is what?
Negative 9.1.
Okay. So at the very outer limits,
Yeah.
but not, if that was the only, that was the biggest outlier, it wouldn't necessarily be a killer.
At this point, I've lost track of where we are. Gene, what was your last proposal?
Sorry.
Well, I think this is what tends to happen is we start with the Bennington 1, how to fix that deviation. What do those fixes do to adjoining districts? And then how does that affect the greater Bennington, Windham County area? And what are the variables or options in doing that?
Right.
And I think what Gene took us through was the Bennington 1 district, Bennington 2-1-2-2, Windham Bennington, Bennington 3, and Bennington 4, and the Windham Bennington Windsor area. And that
Right.
would give us would retain 2-member districts, but not wholly within Bennington, the town of Bennington. Arlington, Manchester, Sandgate, and part of Sunderland would still be in a 2-member district, and the others would all be singles.
Just jumping ahead, Manchester's asked to be a single member, single town district. That's their comment. Do we accommodate that?
And that worked.
Well, it has in the past been a perfect or a very nice 1 town, 1 district.
Can I ask a quick question, Tom, for the sake of, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to take notes on this. How kind of the intention is to turn, how you all plan to turn discussion on these changes into a map.
Yes.
So, I mean, if Manchester stays, sorry, I wanted to say the challenge with, I mean, I know Manchester would like to be its own district, and I did look at maybe some of the options there. The challenge, of course, is that this area generally is somewhat below ideal across the board in terms of population. And Manchester by itself, while is a reasonable district, it is slightly above right ideal. So that's why it tends to work better in a 2-member district when you're trying to distribute the population in reasonable ways, especially in this area. But nevertheless, if it were its own district, what then would you have Sandgate, Arlington, and part of Shaftesbury?
Yes.
So then that means Manchester is happy, but Shaftesbury isn't.
Well, if we take that bottom part of Shaftesbury and add it back in to the Sandgate, Arlington, Shaftesbury district, then take part of Pownell and add it to Bennington, maybe we fix the Stanford issue.
But Sandgate, Arlington, and Shaftesbury is too big, way too big to be a single member district. The one you have already with not all of Shaftesbury is already 7.9.
Oh, it's 7.9 over. I thought it was 7.9 under. Sorry, I was misreading.
Yeah. Shaftesbury is already almost a single member district. That's the issue. So it really doesn't need very much added.
But Arlington is suggesting Sandgate, Arlington, and Sunderland, which I think works. Well, it's light.
How light is it?
3894. So 400.
Sorry, did you just say Sandgate, Arlington, and Sunderland?
Yeah.
I think Tom's right. I think that was a request.
It is. I think that's true. They did say that. But then what happens to Shaftesbury?
Well, as you said, Shaftesbury is almost its own single member.
And uniting them with Glastonbury doesn't get much.
No.
I noted in a conversation with somebody for the last 24 hours that the commentary we got, the report we got from the Bennington Board of Civil Authority had in it the 10% conundrum or misunderstanding of what that deviation figure means. And they're advocating to stay exactly how they are currently configured, notwithstanding the deviations.
I mean, so if we did what, if we made Manchester its own district, and then we made Sandgate, Arlington, and Sunderland, that's a -9%. But then Shaftesbury and Glastonbury are, obviously Glastonbury does not add very much. I don't know what we do after that. Because that's only, just over 3,600, 3,607.
Right, and the tentative map plan for the Reedsboro, Woodford, Searsburg, Somerset, Dover, Wardsboro is a -9.8 now, and under as proposed. So, Rob, can you say something about if we put Manchester as a single, and then working our way sort of back down south? Have you? It's a head scratcher. I grant you. See anything there that can get us through the deviation concerns?
Sorry.
So take your time. This is
I'm playing around with the map and I'm getting the spinning wheel working in District Builder. I don't know why it's not catching. Something went wrong. Please try again.
Go get my atlas.
Okay. If you make Manchester a single district, Sandgate, Arlington, and Sunderland a district, and Shaftesbury, Old Town, Glastonbury, and Woodford, I think that gives you 3962. Then Stamford can go over with Reedsboro, Searsburg, Somerset, Stratton, Jamaica, and Windham, I think. Not sure what's happening up in that neck of the woods. But if that much works, then it leaves Pownell and Bennington to get whacked up. However, I mean, Bennington has to get whacked up anyway. And they're used to it. I think they have two member districts right now. So Bennington and Pownell together probably work something out.
Well, I mean, you know, on the one hand, that is true, but they're kind of in between 4 and 5 members. And if you have 4, then they're too big, and if you have 5, then they're too small. They're like right in between, because it's 18. Their combined population is just under 18,600. So, I mean, there are 2 ways I'm thinking of it are, even if we could do that, is it really better than what I just described? Just to make, because I feel like all of that what we're talking about is just to accommodate Manchester's wish to be a single member district.
Well, and Stamford's desire not to be hooked to Pownell. And Shaftesbury's request to include Glastonbury.
Well, but mine does that too, so. And Woodford didn't want to be, Woodford also wanted to be to the east, as I recall, not to the north and west.
Yeah, well, Reedsboro says requested Glastonbury, Searsburg, Reedsboro, Whitingham, and Halifax.
Yeah, that was a very strange collection.
And they've never been, I don't think they've ever been, or at least not for a long time, hooked up with Whitingham and Halifax. Could be wrong about that.
Tom, can I circle, are you all planning to kind of discuss these ideas and then one person's gonna go back and make changes to either map? I'm just trying to figure out how I can be of best assistance.
Well, in terms of minutes, I don't think you have to record all these suggestions that are coming back and forth. I think anything we agree on should get noted. That's about it.
Yeah, I think we're going to wait and see if a consensus emerges in some fashion right now on this part of the state, Eric. And then if it does, I think we would turn to one of the mappers to say, see what, run it and bring it back to us tonight or tomorrow, and we'll see if I'll continue to like it.
Great, I think that gives me direction to sit idly by and I can take notes on any decisions made.
Mary, do you see anything that's could nudge us forward?
Nope.
Let's see, Windhall suggests putting Windhall, Londonderry, Peru, Stratton, Landgrove together. What happens if we just do that?
That's Peru, Winhall, Stratton, Londonderry,
Yeah,
and Landgrove. But not Jamaica.
they do not mention Jamaica. They said, they do the math and it says 4,249.
What are those? Windhall,
Windhall, Londonderry, Peru, Stratton, and Landgrove.
But then what happens to that other district there with like well, you've got Dorset, Danby, Mount Tabor. Yeah, well, so you take Weston out of that and you'd be left with Dorset, Danby, and Mount Tabor?
No, well, we're looking, the Winhall does not mention West. We also got a very detailed report from Weston.
Right. That's what I'm thinking of, because they wanted to be, they wanted to be more with Londonderry and some towns to the south, as I recall.
Yeah, Londonderry, they want to go as far west as Dorset and then pick up Danby, Peru, Winhall, and Londonderry. Single member.
you know, if we go back to what I was saying there, when we end up with Bennington and Pownell and give them 4 representatives, and if we can split them virtually evenly, then each one comes up 361 short, which is within the deviation. And that makes everything else work.
Wait, I'm sorry, Tom.
Take Bennington with 15,335 and Pownell with 3,258.
Yeah,
18 something.
yeah,
4 districts with a deviation of 361.75, but roughly 350. That works.
well, I mean, it is, they're each would be over 8% too big. Yeah,
Pardon me?
well, I mean, I guess the issue here isn't, to me, whether any one thing works. It's really the big, all of it together, right? Like we're trying to balance a bunch of things all at once. And it does, mean we still haven't figured out what we're going to do with Shaftesbury, for example.
Shaftesbury would be, what was that? Yeah, that's what, 35.
Yeah, you were gonna.
I think what I suggested was Shaftesbury, Glastonbury, and Sunderland.
Is that what they want?
No, that's No.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of what the issue is here. I mean, it feels to me like we're doing a lot of juggling just to make Manchester its own district.
Okay, Sandgate, Arlington, and Shaftesbury.
That's too big.
Yeah, that's 36, 46. Yeah.
So is, and that leaves Shaftesbury, Arlington, and Sandgate whole, Manchester whole, Bennington and Pownell might be divided 4 ways. Stamford, Reedsboro, Woodford, Shaftesbury wanted Glastonbury, and
By the way, it also loses a representative down there. So that's going to cause other issues.
I'm still, Tom, help me out. That configuration was Arlington and Sandgate. I'm sorry, Arlington and Shaftesbury.
Shaftesbury, Arlington, and Sandgate.
Yeah, well, that's
Wait a minute. Mm-mm. No.
that's 64. That's 6,400 people.
Sunderland, Arlington, and Sandgate. And then Shaftesbury, Glastonbury, and Wood.
Sunderland, Shaftesbury, and Arlington. Or Sandgate.
Sandgate, Arlington, and Sunderland together make
Okay.
a negative, they're 387 light. But that's within doable.
Okay, and then that.
So, and what that basically does is it takes Shaftesbury out of the district, it's in the approved map, and then add Sunderland into it.
That then requires,
But that leaves us with a Shaftesbury Glastonbury district that is light by 680, which is outside the
Well, you
realm.
can put Woodford in. And then Stamford, Reedsboro, Searsburg, Somerset, Stratton. Not sure where we go from there.
So, something I just want to add here. So this is, I mean, this does get us to something that maybe we can make into districts, but it actually makes the deviations worse. So, we've got at least Shaftesbury isn't going to like this arrangement because they want to be with Shaftesbury, Glastonbury, and Sunderland, the portion of it they're with now. And Woodford, I think, wanted to be in a different arrangement, at least have some town to its east connected to it. But aside from that, all of the districts you're recommending seem to have worse deviations.
Well, I think the deviations are certainly important, but so long as we're living within the deviations and we can try to give the towns relationships that they prefer, I'd err on the side of giving the towns the relationships that they prefer. So just to
right, but but I don't think what you've described so far is better overall than what I've described.
Well, Manchester wants to be a single member district. I'm just going through, I'm not taking a direction. I've taken Eric's thing and I've tried to put all the towns we're dealing with together in a list on the page so we can deal with their comments. Yeah, so Manchester wants to be a single member district. Windham says they want to be Windham, Londonderry, Peru, Stratton, Landgrove for a total of 4249. Stratton says they would like to be with Windham, Sunderland, Peru, Landgrove, and Jamaica. So I won't get into all the rationale unless you want me to. Sunderland says they want to be in with Peru, Windham, Landgrove, Stratton, Jamaica, and Wardsboro. Oh wait, no, they did not say they want to be in with them. They're saying send them off to do their own thing. They're saying they want to be in Sunderland, Arlington, Sandgate, and add Shaftesbury to Bennington. So Sunderland wants to be in with Arlington and Sandgate.
But okay. Yeah.
That's what it says. Arlington says they want to be in with Sandgate and Sunderland in a one-member district. And Woodford says the BCA prefers these towns be in a shared district: Woodford, Glastonbury, Somerset, Searsburg, Reedsboro, Halifax, Whitingham, Wardsboro. And we're still in the same neighborhood with Dover. So Dover says remove Stamford, add Woodford, and add a portion of Bennington 2 and Bennington 2-3 along Bennington's southern border for 250 people. Remove a strip along the southern border. This one's more complicated if people are following along.
Okay.
Isn't everybody? So they go on. They actually they put a lot. The Dover town clerk, there's just like 2.5 pages. Sunderland would like to be in with Peru, Windham, Landgrove, Stratton, Jamaica, and with Sunderland recommended to be changed. Add Shaftesbury to Bennington, Peru.
No, they just want to be with, I mean, they like being with Arlington and Sandgate.
Yeah.
And my proposal has most of Sunderland with Arlington and Sandgate. It's basically the status quo. Sunderland is currently divided.
It's slightly light, but when we put just Manchester by its own thing and Sandgate, Arlington, and Sunderland together, we've made all 4 of those towns happy.
Well, but you've made some other towns unhappy. So I'm
not sure that we have. I'm not sure that we have.
Well, what about Shaftesbury? It wants to be with Glastonbury and Sunderland.
Well, Sunderland
as it
is
now.
I mean,
okay, but that's okay. So there's a
but if we can make Shaftesbury happy by not dividing them and putting them with Glastonbury and finding another solution, maybe Somerset will.
Somerset doesn't help.
Well, I maybe, but it's also that we're making the deviations worse at the same time. So,
well, I guess that's a question for the group. What's more important? Is it important making the towns happy within constitutionally permissible deviations, or are the deviations more important than putting towns into relationships that they prefer not to be in?
Well, I mean, I just think you're not taking into account that you're never going to get them all to be in arrangements. You're doing it.
Yeah, but
I mean, right?
What does Jean, could you show us what you're proposing to do with Manchester?
I've got Manchester in a district that's very similar to the one it's currently in.
Sandgate and Arlington.
And part of Sunderland.
Right. Yeah, there's some kind of a school district thing that goes on in that part of Sunderland, I think, with Arlington. All right.
It was my suggestion of Shaftesbury, Glastonbury, and Woodford. It works numerically. I have to ask, is there a road between Woodford and Glastonbury?
It's a good question.
Tell you.
It has much in the way of roads.
Says Glastonbury Mountain and
No,
Glastonbury.
the only way,
Road, and I don't see the road.
the only way, Tom, to get from
No,
Woodford to Shaftesbury
yeah,
by car is to go into the village of Bennington and then up to North Bennington, Shaftesbury. The main highway through Woodford is east, it's Route 9, east-west. And there are no roads, virtually no roads in Glastonbury. There's a couple of local roads on the Shaftesbury side. But Woodford is in terms of roads, looks to Searsburg. And on the east, and on Bennington on the west.
it looks like Glastonbury really only has one little part of a road in it. And that, I assume, is where the residents actually are. It sort of dips into Glastonbury from Shaftesbury and then back out, or along the border line, more or less. But yeah, that I would assume it would be peculiar to attach Woodford to Glastonbury and Shaftesbury for that reason.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we solved that.
Well, I mean, the other way to do it is to dip into Bennington.
Yeah.
Well, that would make more sense than Woodford in with Glastonbury and Shaftesbury. There's bound to be a striking anomaly in any map, and but we don't want to start with one.
Well, Glastonbury belongs with Shaftesbury under any configuration.
Agreed.
I'm going to propose we move on to something else. I don't know. I just don't know what.
Go to the Northeast Kingdom and start from there.
I mean, or just accept the fact that you guys have a different map, and I don't see how we're going to get a common solution. You can come up with a solution that takes into account what we've heard from towns, and I'll do the same, and then we can reconvene.
Well, one of the purposes for this work session was to see if there were 2-member district solutions that would, let's just talk about Bennington County. Are there 2-member district solutions that make more towns happy, that have equal or better deviations, and don't cut as many towns, don't subdivide as many towns? And I don't think I think haven't really been talking in those terms because we were just, I think, playing out the two different maps and doing some what ifs. But the single member district map in this area proposes to cut Shaftesbury, right? It would not cut Sunderland, which is currently cut. And it cuts Bennington more than it is currently cut. If I get that correctly. And I don't think we've gotten over to talk about that little piece of Whitingham, but I don't think either Gene, your map, or Rob, yours takes that little piece out of the southwest corner of Whitingham and puts it next door. So
I gave that back, yeah.
yeah, so there are, we haven't really talked about, well, the Gene, your proposal for this part of the state would have two two-member districts involving Bennington, and would keep Shaftesbury, Manchester, and Sandgate in a two-member district. So that would mean 3 two-member districts down there where there are currently 3. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And the single-member district map has no two-member districts and would have some additional subdivisions over what is in the current map. So I guess the way that I was thinking yesterday, we would frame the question, does the retention of single member, or rather of some two-member districts down there, work better in terms of deviations and local preferences in a way that would persuade folks who voted for the single member district map to say, well, to change their minds or not. But I think that was how this exercise was framed in large part. And we may have picked a particularly difficult part of the state to start in.
Tom, I think one of the challenges is, or at least I think what we're coming up against, at least on the numbers side, is if you take the 6 towns, Sandgate, Manchester, Arlington, Sunderland, Shaftesbury, and Glastonbury, which currently are divided in such a way that you have 1 two-member district and 1 one-member district.
Yeah.
Right. And on a per member business, per member, if you look at it per representative, those 6 towns collectively do add up to 3 representatives, but with a average negative deviation of almost 7%, 6.8%, negative 6.8 per district, per one member, if you understand what I'm saying. So the challenge is so in other words, it does equal 3 reps, but it's overall got a fairly sizable negative deviation within reason, but still. So that's why if you pull out Manchester, which has a positive deviation of 4.5%, it becomes very difficult to make up the difference in the rest of the, in the rest of it. That's what we're coming up against. Even just trying to, accommodate what the towns have asked.
I'm
And
sorry, I started rattling off those towns before I got oriented. Which are you talking about, Manchester?
so I'm talking about the 6 towns that are stacked up next to each other: Sandgate, Manchester, Arlington, Sunderland, Shaftesbury, Glastonbury.
Okay, thank you.
And the way they're divided now, roughly speaking, which is not that different from mine, you've got 1 2-member and 1 member, and they're both, in the vicinity of 7% too small. One's a little less than that, one's, right around -7. By making, one member district with Manchester, that's itself too big, that's what kind of causes these other problems throughout the remaining, the remainder of those towns. So that's just an observation about, the challenge of, the current, it's kind of an equilibrium that's not very stable. That's what I'm trying to say, for those who think in those terms.
Mhm.
But if we took Shaftesbury, Glastonbury, and a piece of northeast Bennington with about 400 people in it, that would make a district within limits. And Bennington Pownell is a little heavy for 4-member. So that helps to reduce that problem. And then Bennington and Pownell could split it up 4 ways as they think best. And then you still have that huge district of Stamford, Reedsboro, Woodford, Searsburg, Somerset, Dover. I don't know how far up we go. But that takes care of 1 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 districts, 7 or 8.
Well, what happens to Woodford and Stamford and?
They go into that district that goes halfway up the state.
Well, that,
How far do you have to go? Let me see.
That's the existing Wyndham Bennington. There's some version of that.
Yeah.
It's conceivable that I mean, one way to try to process this is, Gene, as you may have were suggesting, is to take is to stop working on this part of the map and see if anyone who's been working on them wants to make a further proposal in this area and bring it back to the board, let's say tomorrow, to see if that might garner a broader consensus or not.
I mean, the reason I'm leaning towards that is I feel that it's very difficult as we're discovering to do anything and not, this isn't anything new, anything that is, we don't already know, but it's very difficult to make any one change without it contributing to quite a bit of other change. And we're not just trying to improve one thing at the expense of some other, one town at the expense of other towns. At least I'm trying to take the view that we're trying to make, we're trying to look collectively at what's going on and come to some solution that respects wishes, but hopefully kind of in the broadest way we can, but also, as you said, keeping in mind the fact that the population deviations really are the base standard. And the problem of dividing towns. So I feel like trying to do that in a setting like this, where yes, we can come up with possibilities and some of them might in the end pan out kind of in the big picture. It's just going to be very difficult to do in a setting like this versus taking the time to look at what's there, coming up with something that works for a whole region, and then coming back and looking at those solutions.
Well, I'm not sure what happens when you get over into Windham County and a little bit farther north, but what I've just suggested takes only one town, a piece of one town, and attaches it to another. All the other are whole towns joined. But then, Bennington and Pownell would have to be subdivided into 4. So piece of Bennington again would go Bennington is going to be the problem in that.
Well, I mean, the thing that I've developed also divides one town, Sunderland, and then there's the Bennington and Pownell situation. So you divide Bennington again and something with Bennington and Pownell, which are going to have to be divided again because Pownell is too small to be its own district.
Right.
So, I mean, from that point of view, they aren't, it's not like one is obviously better than the other on the division of towns front. And I would argue mine is slightly better because it's not a new division. Sunderland has been divided that way for a while. So I've only just added a little bit more.
I think that brings us back around to where we have been, which is a split on the board between the how much the value of single member districts over the other values that are being presented on the other side of it. And I don't think we've seen any breakthroughs on that. The tendency, I don't think there's any dispute about this, but the tendency with all single member districts is that towns get subdivided at least a little more frequently. In some cases, possibly a little bit more than that. And that using a 2-member district can make that less frequent. I'm wondering if we could try to work our way over to the Connecticut River down here and just see if there's any what that shows us based upon turnout, and that might take us to around 2 o'clock, and then we could either take a 15-minute break or not, or break for the day and do some more individual work. But
Well,
well,
if we get to the river, maybe we can find a bridge and we'll jump.
right. So I'll think when one time I flipped a coin. I don't have a coin to flip right now, but Rob, do you want to, let's say, head east into the Wilmington, Whitingham, Halifax area and tell us what, based upon any feedback that you've discerned, what you might be interested in changing?
Well, we didn't hear from those towns. Wilmington, Whitingham, Marlborough, Halifax, Guilford, Vernon. None of them gave us any feedback.
Well, then you're proposing Wilmington, Whitingham, and Halifax, which are already in a district, correct? That's Windham 6. That's the current single member district down there.
Yeah, it's essentially the same. In the old district, which town is that? Has Whitingham has a chunk of it taken out, and in the district that Jeremy and I put together, it does not.
Did we get Reedsboro in here for a commentary?
No, at least not according to.
Does anyone remember what the rationale was for that little piece of Whitingham? Does it follow a river? Is there the mountain and I think it's a mountain issue.
Well, it was taken just for population,
Okay,
all 53 of them.
okay.
So that district remains pretty much the same, except for that little chunk, and then the Vernon Guilford is the same. So I assume that's why they didn't have any comment. They probably just liked it the way it was and didn't see the need to change it.
And Gene, what are you doing with those 3 towns?
Pretty much the same. The only thing I did was a tinkering to reduce the deviation in the district to its north, Marlborough, Newfane, Townsend, which I think you guys also have as a
Yep.
district. I had taken a small part of Marlborough to reduce that deviation a little bit, but that was really the only thing. And I added it to the Wilmington, Whitingham, Halifax, which isn't really necessary, but I was trying to get things under 8%. So that's why I did it.
What is the current deviation for the Windham 6 district?
You mean as it exists now?
Yes.
With the piece, I mean, maybe, if you look at Jeremy and Rob's map, it's just under 2%, right? Positive 2%, 1.9.
4370.
1.8 looks like. That's the Westminster district with Brookline in it.
Well,
Yeah.
No.
0.94%.
I'm sorry, which district are you talking about, Tom? I thought you were talking about the one Wilmington, Whitingham, Halifax.
I am.
1.94%.
Yeah, 194
plus.
The Windham 6 is currently a plus 0.8.
What's Wyndham 6 currently?
Wilmington, Whitingham, Halifax.
Oh,
Okay, the current one is 6. All right.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Anyway, so that's one where that district and Windham 5, which is Townsend, Newfane, Marlborough, are not much in.
Yeah, we didn't hear anything from Marlborough or Townsend. We did hear from Newfane, and they liked it the way it is.
they like this proposed district.
They like the proposed district in the map that was approved.
which is also the status quo. I mean, it's the same.
Yeah, it's the status quo. So
Okay. What about the current Wyndham Bennington? Well, we've already talked about that, not so much as the rest of the Bennington district, but the bump in population in Londonderry has created some new dynamics there. That's currently, Weston is currently part of that. And let's stick with the southeast. So Vernon, Windham 1, Guilford, Vernon, no one's proposing to change that, right?
Oh, that's almost a perfect district.
Yeah. And then we've got the 3 single-member Brattleboro districts, one of which, hang on here, has a minus 8.9. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of the Brattleboro districts.
So what, is anyone, Brattleboro came back with a very detailed meets and bounds description in response to the tentative map. Has anyone been able to digest that and decide whether that the deviations and the other features of that make sense?
I have not.
I haven't looked at their proposed rearrangement. I know I tried to do the least amount of a change necessary to get the 3 districts, which are currently well, one of them is negative 8.9, one of them is negative 9.6, and one of them is 2.7 positive in Brattleboro. And I kind of rearranged them so they were, the 2 that were the most negative were less negative. They're pretty close to equal is the way I've gotten it. More like -5 or negative 5.3 or 4. But I didn't quite, haven't had a chance to examine what Brattleboro sent and to see what it looks like.
But Rob, are your changes in the tentative map to Brattleboro somewhat modest tweaks to the existing 3 single-member districts, as far as you recall?
Rob stepped out a minute,
Okay.
but I think Brattleboro comes within parameters for 3 districts. They've given us their preference for how to divide it, and those are all fairly equal. I think we just go with what Brattleboro is requesting.
Right. I think so too. We want to be sure. And one of the factors that we haven't been talking about so far is the compactness metric that we're in the process of having added into the maps, so that we can use that if we need to as a, I don't think it would be a tiebreaker, but it might be, it would be informative.
Brattleboro 3.
Yeah, my question, Rob, is what Jeremy and you did in Brattleboro, as far as you recall, would it be fair to say those were modest tweaks to those internal lines with those 3 single-member districts? Was there anything bigger or bolder going on?
No, nothing big or bold, just.
Okay. So we're gonna see what.
happy to look at what they recommended.
Okay. So
I
we're
just
gonna,
haven't had a chance to do it yet.
okay. So that should resolve itself. That would take us now up to the current Wyndham 4, which is a minus 14.7 deviation, and that's Westminster, Putney, and Dummerston. And the tentative map puts Putney and Dummerston together into a single member district with a deviation of 4.5. And then would put Westminster with a portion of Rockingham and all of Brookline into a single.
Brookline objects,
Brookline objects.
which makes sense, because that's not how you get to Brookline. You get to Brookline through Newfane. Brookline and Newfane are closely associated, so a district that has Brookline with Newfane and Townsend, and actually they suggest Athens, that also makes sense. I don't know what it does since you've got Marlborough in there, I think.
But Brookline is currently not in with those towns, correct?
Right, but geographically, it, I
Right,
think, belongs with those towns. And Putney and Westminster and maybe Dummerston, I can't remember, wanted to stay as a 2-member district.
did they say how they can make the numbers work?
I think by heading north.
Into their friends in Rockingham?
Yeah,
Okay,
Westminster said something about North Westminster, but I'm not sure exactly what they mean by it.
I think there was a tiny little bit of Westminster that had been in, that it was taken out and was part of what's the current Windham 3.
yeah, that's true. There's a bit of Westminster that's in the Rockingham district.
So Mary, can I just clarify? So, because my district I made was Rockingham, Westminster, and Brookline. And are you saying that's putting Brookline with Westminster is bad?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. Brookline goes with Newfane, not with Westminster.
Okay.
Fortunately, I don't know how you do that and make the numbers work.
Historically, this was, and this goes back maybe 30 years, this current configuration was a reaction in part to the dropping population in Rockingham, and districts or parts of towns were added in to supplement the population. At one point, it was Springfield, and then it became Athens and Brookline. And that's I think the explanation for how that came out.
And what about, Mary, what about Athens? Could Athens go with Westminster and Rockingham?
I think Athens could more readily than Brookline.
I guess it still doesn't. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just realized it still doesn't solve the problem of where exactly to put Brookline. So, because that district that we were just talking about, that is the current Windham 5,
Yeah, it's
Um,
already heavy.
It's already over 8%, and this would put it way over, it put it impermissibly high.
And Wyndham 3, or the former Wyndham 6, what's Wyndham 3 and Jeremy's in my map. That's kind of set. And if Wyndham 5/Wyndham 2 is also set, I don't know where you put Brookline. I'm very sympathetic to their cause, but I just don't know what to do with them.
Dean, could you put your map up for a moment?
Sure. So
I'm trying to get to the single member, two member district dynamic that we were going to be focusing on a bit this afternoon. Because the Rockingham, Grafton, Windham, Athens, Brookline is a two-member district, as is Westminster, Putney, Dummerston.
right, and it's very difficult to, this was an area where I tried not to kind of reduce by a representative. I mean, I tried that everywhere, but I tried here and I was having a lot of trouble. So this reduction in the district that's currently Windham 4, also on their map. No, sorry, I don't know what it is on their map. But anyway, basically the Dummerston, Putney, Westminster district that currently exists is a two-member, and then in both Jeremy and Rob's map and mine, Dummerston and Putney are a one-member district, and that other member is just kind of absorbed. In other words, there isn't, Westminster's kind of absorbed into some of the other towns without retaining that other representative.
So it becomes it goes in with Rockingham to continue Rockingham in a two-member district and Westminster too, for the net loss of one member.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so and the Bear map, Westminster is a single member with a bit of, it looks like part of Rockingham added to it.
Yeah, just the little bottom portion.
Which I think Rockingham, we did hear from them. I don't think they were too happy about that.
No, but they're gonna have to get divided somehow.
No. Not if they're in a two-member district. So.
Okay, so this is a scenario where going to two-member districts, or going to single-member districts subdivides a town, Rockingham, and combining it with Westminster in a two-member district does not. What has Westminster said about where it would like to be at the end of the day?
Said it wanted to be in a two-member district with Putney and Dummerston.
Right. Do those towns' reports acknowledge the critical deviation challenges? They're saying, Westminster is saying they want to keep Windham 4 the same, but take back from Rockingham, that little blip, and add Brookline to it. So that's their response to the minus 14.7 deviation is to say, give us back north Westminster and add in Brookline.
Right, but Tom, sorry,
So go ahead.
the district that the district to their north, that, you know, the current district, which is Windham 3, right?
Yes.
That they would be taking Brookline from, and that piece of taking back the piece of Westminster. That district, Windham 3, is a negative 18 already. So they, what they're proposing to boost their own, you know, that would boost their own the population of that district, is taking from a district that's already almost 20% too small. So that's the challenge in this whole region. But I'm particularly intrigued by the Brookline question, though, as far as everything else. You know, where it really should be as far as its you know, the type of connections that make the most sense.
So what I think we've got is an example or a scenario that, and welcome Jeremy, welcome back, welcome aboard, where one of the proposals is that the single member district proposal would result in the subdivision of a town, and using a 2-member district approach would not. Neither one of them makes everybody in the area happy. I don't know how you measure unhappiness in that respect, and I haven't. The single member district proposal makes the Rockingham only district a minus 2.5, and the Westminster Brookline piece a minus 1.8. Gene, what is the deviation for your proposed 2-member district?
It's a negative 2.2.
So that perhaps the significant difference is the subdivision of a town. Both towns are already in 2-member districts, so they're used to dealing with that, but this would be probably a big change. Rockingham, under either scenario, is no longer associated with Grafton and Windham. Although I think Rockingham has dominated that. Although I think the current incumbent lives in Windham, one of the incumbents. So that what we said we were going to try to figure out is does the use of a 2-member district in this situation and not having a town subdivided persuade those who are supporting single-member districts to say, well, a 2-member district in this situation makes, we can live with that, it makes sense, it doesn't subdivide Rockingham. Does anybody want to?
I think the person whose opinion matters most is the one who isn't here.
That two-member Rockingham district would include which towns?
Rockingham, Westminster, and Brookline. Is that right, Gene?
Yeah, it's basically the two-member district that I have versus the very same footprint of those towns, those three same towns, divided to make two one-member districts in a situation where the only way to do that is to divide a town. To take a piece of Westminster. And, one of the other things I just wanted to add in this context, in addition to the issue of dividing a town, which, it's connected, of course, is that that piece, those folks from Westminster, or sorry, in this case, it's the other way, sorry, from Rockingham. I think I just think this is one of the things I was really quite new to me, thinking about all the variations and how you can form districts and the different sized towns and the pieces of towns and all of that. The situation like this, where it's just a piece of a town being added to other towns, one other, or in this case, two, but a much larger town, is a situation I think in some ways is the most challenging for me, because I feel like those residents, it's hard for them not to feel like they're just kind of an add-on. If you live in a small town, which I have, smaller than the one I'm in now, that is, that can happen as well. You can be kind of moved around and added to different districts, and you may also feel that, but you also are just a little more maybe used to it as an entire town. But being like a little carved off piece that's added to something else, I just think is something I'd prefer to avoid, because I do think that can leave a bad impression for those folks.
Mary, do you have anything else to add to this discussion about your part of the world?
Only that I think we all realize that the population is shifting north. And so in some sense, the district boundaries are ultimately going to move north. But I do agree with Jean that as a former resident of Huntington, I always felt like we were very much the tail and sort of irrelevant, because our reps were not just from Waterbury, they were from over the mountain. I liked them, but they didn't feel like mine. So, and I think it would be worse to be just a little piece of a town that was carved off to make the numbers work in a bigger town.
I had a quick question, actually, that maybe Eric can answer, and that is, or just maybe look at, is the feedback from Rockingham makes reference to sending a hard copy, some kind of additional material, a letter, because they also talk about Saxton's River.
I haven't received any supplementary documents from Rockingham yet.
Okay, thanks.
Rockingham doesn't want to be subdivided. But when you look at it, Rockingham by itself has about 1,250 more residents than Westminster and Brookline put together. So where do you think both of the representatives for that two-member district are going to come from? That's part of why we think we should be working with single-member districts.
I understand that, Tom. I think that is relevant. It's just that, in my district right now, it's Bristol is certainly bigger than all the other towns in it, and has had representatives from Bristol, and other times has not. So I don't think I actually think in a two-member district, a smaller town, that if it were just added to a quite a bit larger district or town in a 1-member, I think in a 2-member, they have actually a greater chance of potentially electing someone. So,
It's been almost 20 years since Bristol's, no, I'm sorry, Fred Baker was in there. But other than Fred, it's been about 20 years since Bristol's had a representative.
no, Dave Sharp was there.
Dave Sharp.
Yeah, Dave Sharp.
That's
Yeah.
right, that's right.
At one point, they had two, Sharp and Baser.
Yeah.
Now they don't have either. But no, I think just going to speaking of the 2-member districts and that element of equity, that I think is one of the reasons why we supported the single-member district, is the comment from Manchester. It's like, while we have seen the benefit of having 2 representatives from Manchester in the former Bennington 4 district, we support fair representation throughout Vermont's various towns. And that was one of the comments, I think, from Arlington, and one of the other in that other district, is this gives us a chance to elect somebody from our neck of the woods. And you brought up Huntington, Mary, and they love the district that we have created for them. I think it said hurrah or something like that. But it divides Waterbury. But the thought was just what you brought up, is that, it gives them a chance to elect somebody from their neck of the woods. So you're going to get more geographic diversity with single-member districts in representation.
Huntington had a single member. It was just always from Waterbury. And I would also note that Starksborough's letter said the exact opposite, that they thought and a strict adherence to the concept of single member districts was, they used the phrase running roughshod, I think, over the constitutional constraints.
Jeremy, don't take this the wrong way that you just decided to show up and we're taking a break, but I think it's about, maybe we'll take a 10-minute break and come back a little after 2:15 and see where we want to push on to or how we want to proceed. Okay?
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay.
On the way out. Take care of me until tonight.
Do you have a nice vacation there?
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for asking. We went to, it's kind of like Broadway's reawakening. They're starting to be able to put on shows again.
Oh, I went to New York.
Yep. So we went to see Hadestown, just the Anais Mitchell, Vermont singer-songwriter, won like 8 Tonys.
Oh, wow. Oh, it was good.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, like my daughter just started just getting her master's in Columbia,
Okay.
and she's got an apartment in the city now, and that was going to be one of our birthday presents for her, is to get her a show. That might be a good option.
And it was, I mean, the fact that it just swept is like, 8 Tonys is a huge number, but the Vermont connection is really cool too.
Yeah.
It's Anais Mitchell. She initially had put out a record. It's the Greek tale of Orpheus and Eurydice,
Okay.
where Eurydice gets taken down into the underworld by Hades, and Orpheus goes and rescues her.
Okay.
And Hades says,
Coming
"Okay,
back to me.
yeah, you can bring her back to the surface, but you're not allowed to look at her.
Mhm.
And if you look back at her, you'll lose her forever." And once, when he gets to the surface, right as they're about to get out, he turns around and looks. So that's kind of the tale. And it's, you know, there's the Hades and Persephone thing, they're husband and wife. But Persephone's from the surface and she comes back every 6 years and then brings the summer, and that was their whole thing. So there's kind of a story there, but it's told in like kind of a like Rust Belt, industrial age, you know, from it occurring where electrification's happening and like Hades is electrifying the underworld and like building all this crazy industry and stuff like that and becomes kind of a mad titan. So it was really neat. It's just really artsy and cool, but a cool story too.
Where was the theater?
It was in Manhattan, right in the theater district. It's at the Walter Care.
Walter Care.
Just kind of a mid-size.
Okay. Oh, cool. I'll have to take a look at that and we get some tickets for him.
Nice. Yeah, it was highly recommended. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Wow. What's the name of it again?
Hades Town. Oh. If she ends up seeing it, let me know.
I will.
You know, these towns that don't want to get split are maintaining that at the expense of the smaller towns.
Comes through in almost all the cases.
I guess I'll call us back to some semblance of order. Excuse me. This is to the members of the board. What's your pleasure in terms of how we could use the next chunk of our time together? Are you inclined to continue this tour of the state, comparing the approaches of the two different maps, or do you think there's a better way to use our time, or what's the best way to go next?
Well, I guess it's helpful to go through the different comments that the towns had in the problem areas.
Well, we've covered Bennington, Wyndham County. Rob, you sent around a map sketching out or shading out the areas where there seemed to be agreement with the tentative map, disagreement, or no comment, or no reaction. Is that is there anything, let's say, up in the Windsor County area from the BCA comments that you think you'd like to mention at this point?
Well, if you look at the map, we covered two areas that have had comments asking for changes, and that was the Bennington County and that along the Connecticut River and
right
in Windham County. The other areas are sort of the area in Middlebury and north of Middlebury is one spot. The area around to the east of Rutland, with Chittenden, Killington, Bridgewater, Stockbridge, Bethel, that area, and then of course Chittenden County. Those are the big areas where you had a lot of contiguous towns and saying that they would like some changes or potential changes.
Before we move on, I would like to clarify something about the district we were just looking at, the Rockingham, Westminster, Brookline. I guess I want to confirm that that at least, well, I guess I'll ask it as a question. Are we going to not try to do what Rockingham has requested?
I think we need Ed for that conversation.
Well, I mean, do you, is he your decision maker, or do you must have a view of your own?
Well, my view is that, we voted out a single member district map. I think we should go through the map and see what the comments are from the local towns. And we have to decide if our overall philosophy is going to be to do as many single member districts as possible, taking into account the comments from the districts, and under what circumstances do we take those comments to heart. And until we make that philosophical question, come to an agreement, or at least a majority agreement on that philosophical question, I don't think we can answer it. And for that, we need Ed. Because I know my position is that I would like to move forward with as many single member districts as we possibly can.
Right, but this is a perfect example. This district seems like a really good kind of district to be able to clarify people's position, because we're not affecting anybody else, assuming we don't make a change with respect to Brookline for the time being. It's just either they go all together or they don't. There's like a division or there isn't. And I feel like if we can't come to some clarity about what different people want, which may in fact be that we don't have a consensus, but I mean, my view is, I think we should, if Rockingham says, don't divide us, and there's a way to do it without dividing them, I feel like, why not do it? And I'd just like to hear what other people have to say about that.
Well, I'm open-minded. The example that I would use that might even be clearer is Jericho Underhill. I'm not.
What about this? Can we just stick with this? I'm sorry, but why can't we just talk about this particular one?
We could. I mean, they're 6 and 1, half a dozen in the other. They're sort of the same deal. Jericho and Underhill make a perfect 2-member district, and they have a split in one of them if you make them 2 single-member districts. So I'm not unsympathetic. I've got an open mind.
Well,
like that.
But what do you want to do in that situation? That's what I'm trying to find out.
Well, it was totally up to me. Would go with 150 single-member districts, but if others are looking towards a compromise map with some 2-member districts in it, those are the types of areas where I would be willing to compromise.
Well, one way, I mean, we could just take up the Rockingham situation if we were to take these up one at a time as we take them up and encounter them. We could say, well, the proposal here is to go to a 2-member district to avoid cutting Rockingham under the circumstances that we've discussed. Who supports using a 2-member district in that particular circumstance to avoid cutting Rockingham? And see where the chips fall. Is that what you were getting at, Jean?
I mean, I guess, yes, in the sense that I think that's eventually what we're going to have to decide, but I still haven't heard any rationale. So I just want to know if I'm understanding the rationale. So it sounds like what Rob is saying is he would prefer to divide Rockingham to achieve the single-member district goal. Even if they would prefer not to be divided, and we could form this 2-member district and it wouldn't have any effect on anybody else.
Well, it's generally the larger towns that will need to be subdivided if we go with single member. I understand that they don't like it, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think it produces equity and better representation, and it has other advantages such as a smaller area to campaign, probably smaller campaign budgets. I think it probably gives some people the opportunity to run who think that they can't possibly get elected in a 2-member district. I understand that there will be a good deal of opposition to it in the legislature. That's not going to be a surprise. But change comes with difficulty, and if we don't propose it, I don't know who will.
Well, let me go to the constitutional language that directs or urges us wherever practicable to avoid cutting a town. Are you saying that it's not practicable to avoid cutting Rockingham?
Well, I mean, there's a way to do it, certainly. But I'm looking at equity overall and equality of numbers, and there's no doubt that it's easier to draw this map using two-member districts. But Rockingham has 1,600 more residents than is required for a single-member district. And in order to keep them at the advantage of not being divided, we have to put its neighbors at a disadvantage of putting it in with them, and probably being controlled by Rockingham. I don't think that's right.
Could I weigh in here for a second?
Certainly, Jeremy.
To answer Gene's question, I guess I prefer answering questions like this directly. Yes, I favor splitting Rockingham to get to single member districts. I also, it's a little early in the week to be channeling my inner nihilist or whatever, but you know, this is a valuable exercise, I think, for a lot of different reasons. But I would say spending lots and lots of time on these districts, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the legislature is going to be redrawing this entirely. And I think we have an opportunity to say single member districts are the way to go. And as they're redrawing it, they ought to keep that in mind. So just to answer your question directly, Gene, I saw your face after you asked that question, and I wanted to answer it directly. Yes, I support splitting Rockingham, even despite the feedback that we got.
Thanks. I mean, I at least want to know where I stand. You know, I mean, we're going to have disagreements, but I think it's good to know that there are folks on the board who want to push forward with that goal, even in this kind of a situation. That's all.
And Jeremy, did you you can watch the tape if you to catch up to where we are, and Eric is taking good minutes, but we did start in the Bennington area and spent a good hour and a half on that, comparing different options, but did not come to any consensus on, except that we, I think, agreed on some of on what the challenges are, but did not come to any breakthrough on whether a two-member district would be, there'd be a high consensus to use a two-member district in a certain area.
Okay, so I would say in light of that, I would respectfully request that we not debate the merits of one versus two member districts anymore, because we're going to chase ourselves in circles over and over and over. I mean, I think folks at this point are now digging in their heels, and it's not a productive conversation to have, I think. That said, I don't know what the next step forward is, but it does not seem to me like there is going to be a consensus. I mean, I don't know what you do with that, but.
Well, I mean, I think one approach we can take is similar to the approach we took before, you know, when we were developing the maps in the first place, the draft plans, and that is to work independently, or, you know, that is to work on what the kinds of changes we think we would like to make in response to the feedback we've gotten from towns, and apply those to our own maps, or start from scratch, or whatever we want to do, and then, you know, share them with the group, and maybe there will be an epiphany or some other change in people's views. But I'm sort of leaning in that direction only because I feel that I agree with Jeremy that even if there are places where we can come to common ground, we're going to keep bumping up against the same issue, and it's going to get in the way of any other. I mean, we did find some places down in Guilford and Vernon, but nevertheless, the hard spots are the things which I feel like if we both had a chance, or independently, folks have had a chance to explore the comments and how it could be changed on our maps, we might do better to then come back and show people what we've come up with.
I would support that approach. I think that's a good thought, Gene. Thank you.
Makes sense.
I was busily writing down some notes to myself, so Gene, could you sum that up again?
I was just recommending as an option that folks that are, I'm not trying to limit it to say Rob and Jeremy and their map and me and my map, but just thinking of the fact that we both created and spent a fair amount of time creating our own plans. It might be easier for us both to work with the comments we've gotten from towns, the feedback, make adjustments that we think make sense for our maps, and then share those with the full board. I invite anyone to work with me on this. I'm not trying to do it exclusively, but I think the other reason I think it could be more productive is that, right now I have the most knowledge about my map and like what's there and what's not there and where the dividing lines are. And it makes it in some ways quicker just to look at the comments and be able to think about the kinds of changes that I expect maybe even could work. So it may be the same for Rob and Jeremy.
Thank you. I think I can support that. I'd like to ask, further work is being done on the maps in response to Board of Civil Authority reports that you try to find a way to reduce to writing something addressing an explanation, description, or rationale for what the board's response to those towns' requests and comments should be. Because that becomes part of our written report. And some of it is played out naturally here because as people have said things in favor of their preferred map, you've done just that. And I think when we deliver a final report, it will have short paragraphs about the deviations, the geography, the compactness, the common interests, where the town or where the district, how the district has been configured in the past, so that to the extent you can create some kind of a narrative for your map choices, all the better, because that task is still looming. Mary, would you like to weigh in on where we go next? If you are weighing in, you're muted.
Am I still muted?
No, you're not.
Okay, I have two choices and I never know which one will work. I think Gene and Jeremy's suggestion of going off and working on maps in accordance with our preferences makes a lot of sense. Because clearly we're not going to reach a consensus on much of anything here today.
when do you think it might be possible to have that additional work done on the two maps such that we should schedule, well, such that they should be distributed and then sometime be given for understanding them and then having a meeting to take, I guess, take action on one of them?
I assume that question is directed at the map makers rather than me.
Everyone can weigh in on this.
What's our final deadline again, Tom?
Uh,
29th?
The 29th or the 30th.
Well, I would say no later than maybe our next meeting, right? Or next regular meeting on the 22nd.
I mean, I'd be happy to try to set Friday as a date to at least have tried to incorporate as many changes as I can. I don't know if that's overly optimistic. Probably, I typically am, but or Friday or Saturday as a way to distribute something so that on Monday we've at least had an opportunity to take a look beforehand. It's a lot easier if you've looked at it in advance. So I would certainly be able to work towards that.
And I think if we're going to have a meeting on Monday to do that work as a board, that we need to get the materials out on Friday or Saturday at the latest.
I want to broach the topic of requesting an extension, which I realize is not exactly what we would be doing because it's not a class, but I guess I would word it as the possibility of alerting whoever maybe the chair of the government ops in both chambers to the possibility of being late with a reference being made to Thanksgiving and the unfortunate timing that is for us. I mean, we can just proceed and hope to finish. I just wonder if it's worth bringing it up or just waiting until we get. I think it would be less stressful if we knew we actually had a little more time. Let me put it that way.
Okay, I can do that. But I also think that trying to meet next Monday is a good thing, and that I mean, based upon my experience on this, once we have two maps that have been voted on for the majority vote for the Senate and for the House, it's about, I would say it's about a 2-week process to get everything pulled together into a final report. And I know that getting, so I think getting, and you can't really do that final report until you know what the map is. So getting to a closure on the maps, I think, is something we should try to do at the beginning of next week, whether it's Monday morning or not, which would mean getting something around to us on by Saturday, which would give people a day to try to absorb it. Is that something that you mappers think you can accommodate?
I will certainly try.
Try. I would think it would be wise to let Sarah Copenhagen and Jeanette White know that we're having difficulty because of all the reasons we know. And ask them if it's okay if we change the target to December 10th. This is not unusual in the legislature. They order reports all the time and they're always late. So I don't think it ruffle any feathers at all.
I cherish your optimism.
And actually, it occurs to me also, unless Jeremy and Rob are likely to end up changing, say, the Guilford and Vernon district, there may be a few that and we have descriptions for those from 10 years ago, that some progress could be made maybe on a few of that work, a little bit of that work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's do this. I'm going to suggest that we I'm going to suggest a meeting for next Monday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Unless one of you wants to chair the meeting from 9 to 10 in my absence, which we could do. I'm also going to hold out my calendar for this Friday, the 19th in the afternoon, and just block that off myself in case I'm not scheduling a meeting, but if there are board members who want to check in with me, then or bounce ideas off of me, then I'll be available like from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock on Friday the 19th.
I'll be totally unavailable at that point.
Okay.
That may bring joy to some people.
But I'm also available pretty much, on pretty short notice at most other times. So let's do that. I think this was difficult work this afternoon, but I think it was well worth the effort to get a better, more granular understanding of each other in the context of the maps. So, Eric, I will check in with you in maybe in an hour or so. You may have some questions for me. And we'll adjourn at this time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jeremy, I'll be in touch.
Tom, I think because technically this was a quorum, I do think that you need a motion to adjourn an action by the board. No?
The chair can declare it adjourned.
Okay,
I think we will collapse into adjournment. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
Well, I was planning on being here